welcome to the basement. We'll call this the basement. I don't think it's low enough to be a basement, but it is the lowest storage spot. So we're in the pass-through of our fifth wheel, our Rockwood 2899KS. If you guys haven't seen our other videos covering this unit, please go check it out. And I know a lot of you like to see modifications, so new modification today. Let's tell you what it is.
What have you been up to?
I've been riding on a daydream.
Whenever we got our Rockwood 2020, Rockwood, the 2604WS, it's kind of hard to say. Let's say, whenever we got our Rockwood travel trailer, yeah, let's just do that. We wanted to make sure that we had some sort of surge protection available for it, like we did our previous RV, our old Terry camper. The thing is the surge protectors, if you get a good one, they're expensive. I mean, they're, you know, $240, $50. I don't even remember how much it was. Do you remember? It was expensive, and we got a good one. It was a Autoformer brand. It's a power Watchdog. I did a video on that. You may want to go back and look for it, but mainly and importantly, if you're looking for a surge protector for a 50 amp unit, it's one of the best. I love it. It has been great. Of course, I'm going to say the same thing I always do. Everything I'm talking about, the links are in the description of this video. So if you're thinking about getting some sort of surge protection, upgrading your surge protection you currently have, this is one of the best, if not the best. So the Power Watchdog, what it allows you to do is use your Bluetooth on your phone. And we found it to be valuable for a couple of reasons. First of all, it doesn't protect just from surges, but it also protects from low voltage. That's almost as I think that's more important than surges, tell you the truth, because the low voltage, it'll burn out your AC compressors and you won't even know that it's happening, because there's nothing to protect you. I mean, there's nothing that protects, for the most part, on most surge protectors. They only protect the surge, not the low voltage. And we had that problem back in 2017 when we went to a campground, and the voltage was like 98, 96, something like that. If we didn't have or pay attention to our voltage meter that we had inside the RV, again, that's something else I'll put a link to down below. It's a real easy plug-in. It's nice to have. We wouldn't have known. We wouldn't have known. And we would have burned up our AC compressor. So the surge protector, it tells you all kinds of stuff. And I'll tell you, it's so nice that actually the electricians, when we had a problem here, when we first pulled this fifth wheel in here, the electricians actually were using our surge protector to help identify what the problem was. They'd plug it in and say, oh yeah, it still says there's a bad neutral. The problem is that surge protector, as nice as it is, you know, it goes out on the power pole, out, you know, wherever you're plugged in at, it's just out there. So now I've never heard of, and I've never experienced any kind of theft whatsoever. Knock on wood. I think there's plenty of wood in here I can knock on. I think that was that's what's that stuff called? Not Luan. It's the other stuff. It's the lightweight stuff. That's what's in this RV. So we haven't experienced any theft, but the whole idea that I've got something that sits out on that pole and it's lit up, it's bright, but also it has some indications if there's any problems. There's like codes that pop up on it. And our Rockwood travel trailer, I wired it inside so that we could plug in our surge protector inside the RV. When that plug is plugged in outside, as it is currently right now, all the power, everything that has to offer is coming from this now. It puts a 50 amp plug, traditional plug, you know, with the the 4 blades. It puts that on the inside of the RV. So not only is it inside the RV protected, but we could also see if there was any fault codes. Now, I'm in the basement here. If we have fault codes, I can come out and look at it, but it's not as convenient as it was in the travel trailer. The other thing is we got an Autoformer. Some people call it a transformer, but they don't refer to it as a transformer. And this was for whenever we run into these parks, because we traveled so much, we would come into some of these parks that the voltage was a little questionable. And the way that these Autoformers work, and again, I've done a video on this in the past, most of the time you're not using 50 amps. Most of the time you're using about 30 amps at the most. I think even less than that. We're usually probably hovering around, in the 20 amperage range. When the air conditioner kicks on, we might get up to where we're in the 30 amperage range, for the whole unit. But there's still 20 amps that we're not using. Now, what kills motors, and mainly AC compressors, more than anything else, and compressors in general, even the compressor on the refrigerator, which we don't have, but if you have a residential refrigerator, well, actually, we do have that little bar refrigerator. That's a compressor. When you have voltage that's not sufficient, that's what burns it up. So even though you may have a low voltage surge protector like we do, which sounds kind of funny when I say it, we wanted to make sure that we had something that would allow us to operate in a campground that maybe the voltage was bouncing around and was slightly low. And what they do with this Autoformer is they take some of that amperage that you're not using anyways, and through math and of course mechanics, they convert it over to voltage, because voltage is really what burns it up, low voltage more than anything else. So let me flip you around here and show you what we're looking at. And basically, to sum it up, we're going to be taking and making it to where our Autoformer and our surge protector are inside our RV. And I'm going to make it to where we can plug it in and unplug it, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit here. So here's the Autoformer, and it looks kind of crazy right now, but basically I have it plugged into itself just to keep the cord out of the way. There you go. So this is what you could plug into the pole at your campsite, and then you take your RV and you plug into the plug in the side here. You can see the thing is then this is outside. This is not waterproof. It's weather resistant, but it's not waterproof. It has to be something that is protected. Now I have a cover for this. They make a cover for it, but still, now you're talking about another component that's sitting outside that is $500 that somebody could just walk away with. They even got a nice handle for you to walk away with it. And again, there's a bunch of lights on here that lights up and tells you basically the same thing. It tells you what the power Watchdog does. There is some redundancy here at this point, but this does have a complete separate function. Now, what we're running into, or what I've heard, we haven't experienced it ourselves, is that campgrounds, certain campgrounds that have an inferior infrastructure, meaning that their wiring's not the best, they don't like seeing these come into their campground. And the reason is because they say that it steals and makes more voltage. It doesn't. You have a 50 amp circuit. This plug means I can only take 50 amps away from the campground. No matter how I take it away, it still can only take away 50 amps. So really their argument isn't so much that you're doing something illegal and you're causing problems with their infrastructure. It's more their infrastructure cannot deliver a full 50 amps, and they're hoping that your RV will continuously run under 50 amps even if you need a full 50 amps to run all the stuff on board. So it's kind of a catch-22. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm just making this to where I don't have to explain it to anybody. And that is by mounting it inside, just like I did with the other RV that we had, our travel trailer. So what we're going to do is I've got a mounting this is something you can buy separately. You don't have to have this. You can just have this component. That's what we did, and we secured it to the floor. But then I went ahead and bought the bracket for it because it was so much easier. But what I'm going to do is mount this thing to the floor and take the wiring that is currently going from the plug outside and up to, and you can kind of see this spaghetti-ness of wires. There's a power wire that's coming from the plug all the way in the back of the RV, you know, that is plugged into the post right now. I'm going to take and I'm going to terminate that and split it, and I'm going to instead put this kind of a connector on the wire that's going to the control panel, the fuse panel that's inside the RV. So it gives me the ability to plug into the surge protector or the autoformer, and then the piece that's coming from the plug in the back, I'm going to install this box. Now again, this is all a kit. This piece here is a kit. I will include that in the link, and then of course the autoformer, and then the optional mounting bracket too. So it's pretty straightforward. All you're doing is taking a wire that's coming, and it's a big wire. I mean, it's a thick wire like this. You're taking it that's coming from the back, and you're basically putting an outlet on it. And then on the other end of it, you're putting a plug. And that'll allow you to put this in between. So you can plug and unplug it. So why would I want to do that? I know a lot of you have already researched this, and you're like, well, they make it to where you can hardwire your transformer or your autoformer, and they make a kit that you can hardwire your surge protector. It's a hardwired surge protector. Well, as good as these components are, and I've never had an issue with them, they do have a fail-safe in them, and it's about an $80 circuit board. If you run into a crazy situation that the component that's struck by lightning or something, those circuit boards are meant to fail instead of killing your $300 surge protector or your $500 autoformer. These things will protect themselves though by losing out that $80 board. So if that happens and I lose my autoformer and I lose my surge protector, but everything else is normal inside the RV. Let's say the power company comes out and fixes whatever happened. I'm not going to have the components needed to replace the board inside of the autoformer or the surge protector right away. But I need to make it to where the RV can be plugged back in right away, even without a surge protector, which I don't want to do, but I could do. So that's why I have it to where we can unplug these components. Now there's another reason that I unplug them. When we run on a generator, when you run on a generator, you don't want any of this stuff plugged in. An inverter style generator does not need a surge protector, and it definitely don't need an autoformer. You don't want those things. You don't want either one of those in conjunction with a regular inverter style generator, or even an old contractor style generator. The fact that I may run a generator, I have to unplug all this stuff and bypass it and run the RV directly off the generator. So that's why we're making it to where we can plug and unplug this stuff. You can hardwire it. If you feel as if you don't have a problem with your surge protector blowing and you don't think the chances of that's good at all, that I say do the hardwire kit. That way you don't have to mess around with all these plugs in that. But I personally want to be able to disconnect them and run maybe just the surge protector. What if my autoformer fails? I can run just the surge protector. Or if my surge protector fails, I can run just the autoformer because it has a lot of that built-in feature already. There's no Bluetooth on the autoformer, but still. The other point on that Power Watchdog with the Bluetooth that I failed to make, when we come into campgrounds that charge for electricity, which we have, you can see how much electricity, kilowatt hours, you've actually used. Not what's on the pole, not what they say, not what the electric company says. It's what is actually going through the Power Watchdog. And quite honestly, it is dead on. It is perfectly on, right perfect on. So 90% of the campgrounds that charge for electricity, we've had numbers that match. Some of the campgrounds, they don't give us numbers, they just give us a big dollar amount, and that's whenever you go, oh, wait a minute, how much do you pay, kilowatt hour wise, how much do you pay? or how much does it cost? And they may come up with a 11 cent or something like that. Hey, it costs us 11 cents, kilowatt hour. Well, in that case, we only used $150 worth, because I'm showing that I only used, maybe $1,300 or 1,300 kilowatt hours. So it's nice to know. It's nice to have that. It's just something that you may want to think about. So we got to find a location for this, and we got to make it to where I can unplug and plug it back in whenever we run a generator. And yeah. Now, along the lines of this, somewhere down the road, maybe I'll make an automatic switch box that'll allow me to plug in the generator differently, to where it just bypasses all this. But right now, this is the easiest way. So I say before I do the work, but let me get into it and we'll show you what we're working with here. This is where I talk about a bunch of disclaimers. I'm not an expert. I don't know what I'm doing. Don't follow what I'm doing. I'm just showing you what I'm doing for your pure entertainment only. So basically, this is the wire that is coming from the power port in the back of the RV right now, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. That power port they put all the way in the back, and then they run it all the way up here to the fuse box that's actually in the bedroom. That is accessed on the back side from underneath the bathroom cabinet. So that's why I'm kind of touching this area. It kind of goes over there. And anyways, it's a massive wire. So what you need to do is make sure there is absolutely no power whatsoever going to this wire. How do you do that? Well, you turn off or disconnect your batteries. You turn off any kind of power inverter that might be on. Like in our case, we have this big power inverter here, this 1,000-watt deal. And then you go ahead and make the cut. So my thought process on this is, where I'm mounting the Autoformer at, and where the wire needs to be the longest. And I have options. I have different options that I can do here. One is I can take and mount this plug that we're going to ultimately plug into. I can mount it on the floor, which is probably not a bad idea. There's some water here that I got to be concerned with. Some water lines that if they leak, I've got to be concerned with. I can put the power port on the back of the wall there, make it to where I can plug it in there. I think I want to make it a little bit accessible though, so it's probably going to be up front here. Hopefully we don't have any issues, but things happen. I mean, there's the water pump right there. And again, here's a water line, here's a water line, here's the toilet drain, here's a drain for the washer, here's the drain for the sink, here's the drain for the shower, there's the hot water tank, there's a couple of lines there. So the fact that you're putting electrical anywhere near water, I mean, you've got to be aware of that. You've got to make sure that you take all your precautions that you can. In my case, though, there's only so much that I can do to get away from this. I mean, there's a lot of water that's involved in this area, and there's really no way that I can hide it or get around it. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you what I ultimately come up with, but my thought process right now at this point is just trying to figure out how much wire I need to make this plug situation work. Okay, so time for a little bit of an update. Again, the wiring you should know about. That's why I didn't go over it specifically, because like I said, don't do what I do. Just watch what I do. If you decide to do it your way, then go right ahead. But in the meantime, we're getting a little bit closer, I should say, to being finished. Technically we are, if we wanted to, but let me go ahead and go over this with you. I cut the wire that's coming from the back of the RV, the plug. I ran that wire then into this box here, and this is where I mounted it. So if you have a Rockwood fifth wheel, you could do the same thing. You could cut the wire, the same wire in the same place, and you could run it over to here and mount it. So this is mounted. So what does that mean? Well, if I plug in the RV right now to the power post out in the park or a generator, there's going to be power here for the RV to use. The thing is the RV, the wire that goes to the master fuse panel, it's been cut. You know, that's where this wire came from. And that's what this tie-in is. Now, if you see these big wire nuts, these are outdoor wire nuts, which of course we're not outdoors, but I used this on the old RV, and they're filled with silicone to keep them sealed off and just for corrosion and stuff. Again, I do have a drain here. I'm not real happy about that. In case there's a problem, I do kind of have a drip line going here. If you can see, I supported the cable here, the plug that we have now wired into, as I keep on touching the silicone, as we wired into the fuse panel. And then this is part of the kit. This is the end then now that is wired in to the fuse panel of the RV. So you can see if there's power there that's available, all I have to do then is plug in this, and now the power goes to the RV just like normal. There's no surge protectors, there's nothing. Basically, I made a big disconnect for the RV right here. So if we're running on a generator, this is the way I would do it. I would have this, which there's a strain relief up here. It's, you know, so I can pull on it and move it around. It's not going to hurt it as much. And I may put another one of them right here, possibly too. I do have some wire tie to hold some stress there, strain relief, I guess you could call. But this would be how I would set it up with the generator, so that the generator is powering the RV direct using the plug that's on the back of the RV. Now, I unplugged this, and now gives me the ability to plug in my surge protector in there, and then again, plug the RV into it, or plug in the Autoformer, and then plug this into the Autoformer, or, like in my case, I will plug in the Autoformer, and then the surge protector, and then plug this into the surge protector. So you can get an idea of if the Autoformer or the surge protector fails, I can always unplug and go right back to this direct. And again, if I'm running the generator, this is how I would run anyway. Okay, the monstrosity, the Frankenstein, is complete. Now, a lot of this is me being a little bit anal retentive and making sure that everything is secure. So I've got it to where there's very little motion happening here. We use wire strips and that. Of course, you don't have to do any of that. You just have to make sure that it doesn't come unplugged as you're driving down the road, which I honestly don't think that it would, but you never know. So again, secured, that's secured. I put in a support there, but more importantly, this will allow us to do exactly like I said, and that is no longer do we have to have our surge protector that out on the pole ever again. Never, ever, ever, never, never, ever. And as far as low voltage is concerned, we're covered. You know, other than this protecting us from that, this also protects us from that, and this also helps with that. So again, the links are going to be down below for all this. I'm going to button all this up. We're going to put that false wall back up again to block all this off. Now, if we get to where we're always unplugging this and plugging, you know, back in the RV, which again, at this point, now that it's all finished, let me show you what you would do is basically this gets unplugged, this here. This is what goes to the RV and its power to the fuse panel. You would unplug this, you unplug this, which is going to the Autoformer there. That just goes into the Autoformer, and you just plug this in direct. That's all. And this loop, you can tell there's plenty of room for that to go in the way that it needs to be. But this will allow us to run the generator without any surge protection that's getting in the way. So this project's finished. And I know that on camera this looks really crazy, you know, with all the plumbing and everything, and, you know, just every which direction. But for the most part, everything is pretty good. It's not, there's nothing really that I'm afraid of. So we're in good shape here, and Heidi will close it out. How about that?
As always, we hope to see you out here. Bye.
Bye.